Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Identity Insights by Indicio. This show is set up to give you a look at the latest news from around the decentralized identity community and an opportunity to learn a little bit more about what Indicio has been up to lately. Today, I'm joined by Helen Garneau, Chief Marketing Officer of Indicio and co-chair of the Hyperledger Foundation Marketing Committee. Helen was a part of the Indicio team that recently attended the 2022 Hyperledger Global Forum last week in Dublin, Ireland, and she's here to share a little bit about her experience and give some insight into the event. I appreciate you taking some time to speak with me today, Helen. For those not familiar, could you please briefly tell us what Hyperledger Global Forum is?
Yeah, for sure. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me. So the Hyperledger Global Forum is the once yearly kind of mega event for the Hyperledger Foundation. Hyperledger Foundation, for those of you who don't know, is the open source project at the Linux Foundation that houses a lot of the kind of premier blockchain and distributed ledger technology, or DLT, toolboxes, repositories, libraries. So it's a place for people who are interested in blockchain to come and use open source and contribute to open source projects and participate in the community. So Global Forum is kind of the big mega event for the foundation. So they describe it as like the premier place for enterprise blockchain adoption. So we have big companies from all over the world that come together to talk about these projects, to talk about the recent adoptions, recent deployments of the technology. And so it was, 3 days of for the community contributors, the members, which Indicio is as a member of Hyperledger, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure, in a little bit. Service providers, enterprise end users from all over the place to meet, align, kind of plan, and really hack and talk to each other in person. So that was one of the events that we were there for. Actually, there was a members only event that we participated in. That was just a 1 day conference just for the members. There was the 3 days of Hyperledger Global Forum, and then there was Open Source Summit, which happened to be at the same location at the same time. So we were there for altogether, I think 5 days, and we went to 3 events. So it was a really busy week.
It definitely sounds like it. I know, right, Indicio was there to obviously talk to all these people that came out, and we had a few sessions lined up to, kind of go over some of the new technology that we've been working on. Could you tell us a little bit about some of those sessions that Indicio led?
Sure. So Heather Dahl, our CEO, and Sam Curran, our deputy CTO, and he's actually the co-chair of the Hyperledger Aries working group, one of the projects that Indicio contributes to and participates in. They actually led, and I helped as well, led the identity breakouts discussion workshop that was at the member day at the Hyperledger Member Summit. And that was really interesting because we really had good conversations with a lot of people who were really close to blockchain because they're members of Hyperledger. So they're around the community, but maybe they work in Fabric, or maybe they work in Sawtooth or Besu or some of the other projects at Hyperledger. But they didn't really understand Hyperledger Indy and Aries, which is where we spend a lot of our time. Hyperledger Indy being the DLT, the blockchain that is bespoke for identity, and then for Aries, which is sort of the software and the agents that run on that network. So those are the 2 projects at Hyperledger that Indicio is really close to, and it was really interesting to talk to people who maybe weren't as familiar and learn about the blockers and some of the issues that had come up in their use or their adoption, or kind of questions they had. So that was really interesting. I also led a session during that member day, just focusing on the marketing opportunities at Hyperledger. And so just talking a little bit about the benefits to being a Hyperledger member, including having the access to webinars and use cases and different events that are specific for members. And then Global Forum started on the next day. So then Heather Heather had a session with Mike Vesey, who's the CEO of a company called ID Ramp, and they talked really at a really kind of poignant look at decentralized identity and how it is ready to use today. That was the big takeaway. So they talked a little bit about use cases and things that were happening in the community to really show the really quick track that we've seen this year, especially in the last year and a half, for adoption for decentralized identity. So that was a great session. Trevor Butterworth on our team, who is based out of Ireland, he was there as well. He had a session with the CTO of another company called Trinsic, and moderated by Kalia Young, identity woman. And they talked about more about kind of use cases. And that was really, I mean, the name of the game of the session of really the 3 days was use cases, was showing what people are doing with this technology. So Indicio has so many awesome customers with so many deployments that it was great to bring those to light. And then the third event that was on that took place over that week was called Open Source Summit, which is the greater kind of Linux Foundation open source community beyond blockchain. We're talking cloud native, this CNCF, the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, and other technologies that are also open source. And Sam spoke at that about Indian Aries, but for the kind of bigger LF broader audience. So we were there for a week. We talked everywhere. We tried to take advantage of all the opportunities we could. And it was a really exciting few days.
So right after all those conversations, was there any interesting questions or kind of feedback that stuck out to you? Was there Q&A sessions for these, or how did that go?
Yeah, so we did have a really good Q&A. Again, a lot of people are interested in the use cases. A lot of people are interested in, to hear what we've been doing with these open source projects, the sort of roadmap of what was ahead. But at the same time, it wasn't just us talking the whole week. We went to a bunch of sessions. We had a lot of really interesting conversations. There was a keynote. Jim Zemlin, who's the executive director of the Linux Foundation, he attended and gave one of the opening keynotes for the event. He talked a lot about his perspectives on security of the projects and kind of the future of kind of LF initiatives. And that was really cool to hear him speak. It had been, I think they said it had been a few years since he had been at Global Forum to speak. But anyways, he was really interesting to talk to. I actually got to meet up with him at one of the after parties, and we chatted a bit. It turns out because there is one of the Linux Foundation's projects has to do with the Academy of Arts and Science and Motion Pictures. He gets, and that's not the exact name of the Academy, but basically the Oscars. So he gets to go be a seat filler at the Oscars because of the involvement he has with some of the open source projects with the movies, the biggest movie studios in the world. So I thought that was kind of funny. So I chatted with him a bit. There was another great session from Liz Tanner, who is the Secretary of Commerce from the state of Rhode Island, and her colleague Jim Mason. They spoke about how the state of Rhode Island implemented decentralized identity with in a small pilot having to do with certifications for accountants in Rhode Island. It sounds like a very small use case, but that's kind of what we talk about at Indicio. We talk about starting small, and they did a really wonderful job talking about the process that they went through, the open source repositories of tools and ledgers at Indian Aries. So that was a really great session. I think there's a recording of it, and I highly recommend folks to check that one out. And then the other one that I thought was really cool was the government of British Columbia, just the week prior, got a digital wallet, a Hyperledger Aries bifold digital wallet in the App Store, so people can download it today on your phone. And so they did a tour. They did a full demo of that their wallet, and showed how credentials can be issued and verified using the wallet that now is available for anybody in the App Store. So really, that definitely piqued my interest. So I downloaded it immediately.
That's cool. How did it work? Was it pretty functional?
Yeah. Oh, it's great. I mean, that's the thing. So much of this technology is ready to deploy and ready to use. And this is a great example of one of them. Aries Bifold is a project that that Indicio donated a lot of the initial technology to a couple of years ago after winning, being a finalist for the Department of Homeland Security Science and Innovation project. They had basically a wallet competition, and Indicio was a finalist. And so once we got to that point, we realized that this is something, a wallet shouldn't be a blocker for an organization to use this technology. So we open sourced it to Hyperledger Aries, and it was accepted, and now the community is picking up and running with it. So the government of British Columbia picked up the tech, and they've really expanded upon it. And so there's a lot of really cool additions that they've made. And so yeah, definitely calling out for people to check it out.
So it seems like security and implementations were some of the most notable subjects at the event. Could you share with us a bit more info about some of the other topics and ideas that were exciting that you were able to hear about?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the big announcements at Open Source Summit was something called the Open Wallet Foundation. And this is another initiative having to do with digital wallets, and really focusing on the impact of being able to port your information from device to device, not being locked in, not having that vendor lock-in. There's a lot of overlap with decentralized identity and the Open Wallet Foundation. So we're really excited to watch to see how they what they produce and what opportunities there are to adopt some of that technology. So we'll definitely be keeping our eyes on the Open Wallet Foundation. But there's a lot of Ping Identity, a lot of big organizations that are part of the Open Wallet Foundation. Ping Identity, MasterCard. I can't even think of all of them, but definitely some really heavy hitters in the community that are really focused on how do we make digital wallets something that aren't just trapped on your Apple phone or your Google phone. And so that was a really interesting conversation to see that kind of the first meeting of that foundation in person. The other big notable announcement from the event was that the PyTorch Foundation was established, and this was an code and technology that was contributed by Meta. So it was really cool to see Meta, Facebook, come to the table, come to the open source table, and that particular project has to do with open source around AI, artificial intelligence. So it'll be interesting to see again what implementations, what else, how that project and foundation grow. So there was quite a buzz about the PyTorch when we were there as well. So I know I'm missing a bunch of stuff, but there was just so much that it was really interesting to see the greater open source community of the Linux Foundation come together at Open Source Summit. And also just see where kind of Hyperledger and where our projects, where Indy and Aries kind of fit into the greater kind of umbrella of the LF. Because there's, again, a lot of folks that I think are working on some really interesting things that I think decentralized identity could be a part of and could complement. So yeah, I know I'm missing a bunch, but those were the ones that really stood out.
So what advice would you give to someone who's thinking about going next year? How valuable would you say attending, one of these events was for you?
I would say it's hugely valuable. I can't stress enough how important it was just to be in the same building as the contributors, the maintainers, the community. They describe themselves as being the premier event for enterprise blockchain, and that is 100% true. Like, it was so cool to see names from IBM and governments all over the world, and then smaller developers as well, coming to the table and hashing out and having good conversations about the future of the projects and implementation and where they want to go and how they can help one another. Like, the open source community is something that I believe in so passionately about, because it's really about technology for the greater good. It's really about making it possible for anybody to be able to adopt decentralized identity, to be able to bring it to the table and talk about interoperability and talk about things in a way that I think when you're just in your silo of your particular company or your particular project, it just doesn't have as much kind of momentum behind it. When you have multiple companies coming together and working on the same projects and problems, and these are some of the greatest minds out of all these different companies, it really leaves you with a sense that, the future is in this technology, and it'll be awesome to see how people use it. So lots of great conversations, lots of stellar presentations and sessions about the deployments and the different ways that people are using it. And I'd just say that it's hugely helpful for anyone who's interested in distributed ledger technology, blockchain, open source. Anybody who thinks that there's value in kind of combining forces to find threats and vulnerabilities and benefits and opportunities in this technology, to come together and hear about it. The staff of Hyperledger does an incredible job getting the best sessions presented. They had a workshop day that was just hands-on, so people could come and bring their blockers and learn about the projects. They during the one-day member event, they really were led thoughtful conversation about the future of Hyperledger and where we're going, and how to lower barriers of entry for developers who want to get involved in the community. So it was really cool to see those sessions come through and see how there will be more opportunities as we go for developers to be involved, and for non-developers. I go to Hyperledger Aries communities meetings, and I'm not a developer, but I find ways to contribute through writing, through placement of speaking events or what have you. So it's I would just say being in the same room as just other people after COVID is just it's a real treat. And I would definitely say next year, if you have the opportunity to attend Global Forum, I would definitely recommend it.
Well, it looks like that is our time for today. Thank you so much for joining me again, Helen. If you want to learn more about the Hyperledger community, I'll have a link to their website below. And if you're interested in learning more about decentralized identity in general, and want to continue your education in that, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, and we'll continue to bring you some more educational content. If you have any specific questions or topics that you'd like for us to cover, please be sure to leave a comment below, and we'll take a look at them. Thanks again, Helen. I loved what you were saying about being able to get involved in the Hyperledger community. Where would you suggest that someone start if they're interested in that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the after spending last week with for 4 or 5 days with the open source community, everyone is just so excited that people are interested and involved and want to help. I would say show up. If you have a question, if you have a concern, if you have something, a good idea, that direction that you want one of these projects to take, show up, come to the meetings. We have a list on the Indicio website for all of the meetings that our company either leads or contributes to, or somehow is involved with. So I would definitely say start there, is show up to those meetings. You don't have, again, I'll say it again, you don't have to be a technical person with a developer background. Indicio participates in many calls. I know you, Tim, are on the Aries implementers working group, or the identity implementers working group, right? Is that right?
Yeah, I'm on the identities working group.
Yeah, the implementers group. So yeah, I mean, people can join with all kinds of things that to offer and contribute to. So definitely check out our list. Check out the Hyperledger website. There's meetups. There's a great global meetup group, different groups all over the world that Hyperledger supports. So check them out on in their meetup community. And yeah, I think that as long as people show up and bring their questions or concerns, I would say that they're definitely moving in the right direction. I'll also say that if you have a budget for membership, being a member of Hyperledger is really valuable. I'm talking to all the marketers out there. There's a huge bang for your buck, to be quite honest, from the marketing perspective. There's so many opportunities that Hyperledger has to showcase their members' work and offering a way to make connections. They have, I mean, I think I went through the list in the session that I led for the member summit, but we went through the use cases that they create that are really beautiful on their website. They have so many great use cases, but they'll do a wonderful job doing a use case for your organization, for your deployment. They do great member webinars. They have speakers bureaus. They have different interest groups. Like, there's just so much that from a marketing perspective, from a visibility perspective, for being a member. So definitely check that out. If you have budget, if you have time, I would definitely say 2 thumbs up for the bang for your buck you get out of being a Hyperledger member.